This in from Rick on the Isle of Wight says, just recognise the real situation. Biden was a puppet, and if Harris wins, she'll also be a puppet. So the choice the US is making is Trump's second term or Obama's fourth. Yeah, but is that a puppet, or is that just having the same view as your own party? I don't know. You know, I'm just throwing that out there. Thank you, Rick, for that. Tens of millions of Americans, of course, heading to the polls today to elect the next president, tipped to be one of the tightest races in history. Donald Trump, Kamala Harris have both predicted victory in their final pitches to voters. Harris vowed to be a president for all Americans, while Trump discussed what he called the 3,200-mile-per-hour bullets fired during an assassination attempt. He went there and relived it. Let's speak with the journalist Callum Cafferty on this very point. Callum, afternoon to you. Who's your man of these two?
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on. Personally, I'm going to be backing Kamala Harris. I feel like the biggest issue for us in the UK is NATO, and Trump's stance on NATO, constantly threatening to leave, encouraging Russia to attack what he calls delinquent nations, is a big threat to our security in the UK.
Do you not think, I mean, Trump had that moment where very publicly he said to, I think it was Angela Merkel, I think he was filmed saying it, you know, you guys are not putting enough money in. We're doing all the work here. Get your finger out and throw some cash into the pot. I mean, that's not a bad thing, is it? Someone who's going to not just roll over and take these international institutions for what they are, but actually say sometimes we need to revisit things.
Well, of course, but I feel like his rhetoric, if he actually does weaken US presence in NATO, that could have a negative effect on us, and we are actually exceeding our NATO contributions. If there's a weakened US presence in NATO, even just the optics of one, I believe that that could allow Russia to wreak more havoc in the UK and other European nations than it already does.
So you think Kamala Harris would have a better influence, if that's the right word, or a better dialogue, should we say, with somebody like Putin than Donald Trump would?
Well, I believe that she's more reflective of what the UK's interests are with regards to things like Ukraine. I'm sure Donald Trump's got very close ties with Putin, but I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. I think that his stance on Ukraine, when he is calling for most of the foreign aid to be withdrawn, him and his Vice President J.D. Vance are doing that, I think that that's dangerous with regards to the European security and with regards to the UK's agenda on that.
What do you think Kamala Harris's greatest contribution has been to the world so far?
Well, see, as Vice President, I don't think she was too involved in foreign policy, so I think that's difficult to say. I think what Kamala Harris is promising, and I think what her contribution has been so far, is just to continue the status quo with NATO, and I think that would be a better thing for the UK.
Is that the only factor, if you like, Callum? And it's not an irrelevant one, I get that, in terms of not just our relationship with the United States, but the United States' relationship with the wider world. NATO is clearly key to that, and you've outlined your reasons why you think it's safer with her than him. But it's much more than just that, isn't it? It is Ukraine, it is the Middle East, it is China.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned China, because I think that could also be a huge point of conflict if Donald Trump were to be elected. We're seeing now that David Lammy is trying to restart, trade talks with China. He's trying to increase cooperation with China on a variety of industries. And I think if Trump comes along and introduces his proposed 60% tariff, whether he will or will not, it doesn't really matter, because he's got that rhetoric of anti-China and US protectionism. And I think that that would lead to a huge clash with Labour down the line, because we're going on opposite paths.
I don't know if you saw his 78-hour rally last night. I think it might even still be going on. He could be in a room on his own at the moment, still giving it large, as it were. But he did throw some compliments towards President Xi and China. He talked about how, whatever you want to say about this guy, he's not an idiot.
Well, of course he's got to show respect to President Xi, but his actions in office might be quite different to that. Of course he respects him, but if he's going to continue down this path of, trade wars and protectionism, then I don't know if that respect is even going to be shown while he's in office.
In terms of the result, then, I mean, you think you prefer Harris. Are you confident it will be Kamala Harris?
Not at all. I think even though pollsters have shifted this way now, they're sort of shifting towards Harris in the key swing states. I think they did the same in 2016. You know, all the pollsters were saying that Hillary Clinton was going to cinch it from Donald Trump, and look how that turned out.
Yeah.
I think the Republican, quote unquote, silent majority may end up pulling through and giving a Republican victory. But honestly, I still think it could go either way.